be open, be curious. Don't take things for granted, because the world we're living in the moment is changing very, very fast. Some doors are closing. I think this lifetime employment, as our parents knew it, doesn't exist anymore.
Hey Changemakers! Today we are so honored to be interviewing Anke Berning. Before Anke became a coach, she used to set up companies in Switzerland and other countries from an administrative point of view for clients. She then went from full-time to part-time employment before starting out as an entrepreneur herself. In Anke's career coaching with clients, she came to realize that future entrepreneurs, especially those coming straight from full-time employment, really needed support on the practical issues of setting up a company in Switzerland, like how to structure a business. This, combined with coaching on personal development and mindset, really became Anke's personal coaching package, and we're so excited to interview her today. Hi Anke, welcome to the show.
Hi Stephanie, thank you for having me.
Okay, so you have so much knowledge and wisdom about self-employment and entrepreneurship, which is why we decided to interview you today. So maybe just to get started, why do you think it's attractive for young adults to become self-employed nowadays?
I think a huge attractive factor is basically the fact that there's an element of freedom in self-employment. Mm-hmm. No boss, you can set your own parameters, you can set your own time, you can do what you want. There is certainly an element of freedom that is very, very attractive for many people. And also it's exciting to be able to pursue your own dreams as opposed to being a part of the dreams of others. And maybe to mention another point, I think there has never been a better time than now to start up a business on your own. There are so many opportunities in the digitalization age, and the internet really offers a window to new markets, to clients, to new audiences. And maybe as another point, entrepreneurship really offers the possibility to pursue creative paths, niche areas, and cultivate a passion and get paid for it.
Good point. I know many of our young adult clients are so interested in really building their own career. They haven't, maybe they haven't gone to uni yet. Maybe they're just starting out, but they're already so passionate about finding something that is really right for them. So what skills do you think are important to master to become a successful entrepreneur?
I think you made a good point saying that there are a lot of people already, even before they leave school, who are setting up self-employed structures, business ideas. And I think the key point really is a curiosity and openness towards those new ideas, new technologies, new developments, because that's really grasping these opportunities and the chances, help you to create something new, something different, or something unique. And there's no blueprint. You're creating something as you go along, and you're learning by doing. And that also can be very, very motivating, and it's fun. It's actually something that gives a lot of pleasure if you can pursue your own ideas, your own steps. So I think the curiosity, the openness towards those things is my number one criteria for skill set. Another skill set that I think is equally important is that you need a certain element of risk taking, because there's no guarantee that it will work out. You can fail, you will make mistakes, you will certainly make mistakes that can hurt, but this is also how you will grow. You need to be able to develop managerial skills. And I know there might be a lot of young people out there who say, yeah, but I don't have them yet. I have never worked before. I don't have experience working in a company. So how do I develop managerial skills? And that's just by growing along, by doing things, by taking action. And you will learn developing your own products. You will learn managing your own business. You can take courses, you can go to university, but I still think that uni is not a condition for developing a successful startup. It certainly won't hurt, but there are a lot of examples of people out there who didn't go to university, who didn't even finish college, or who started a university course afterwards, after they already had their fingers on a product or on a development idea. And also, you do not only need to be able to manage your own business, but also to manage yourself. And that is a factor I think that's very often overlooked, because you need to be able to lead yourself. You are your own boss. That means you have to guide yourself. You have to lead yourself. And we will probably be talking about that a little bit more coming up. But it also means that you have to be prepared to work hard, because there's so many things out there in the internet that say, oh, just from 0 to 100 in 10 days and make a 6-figure income in half a year. And yes, people can do that. And there are success stories like that, but not for everybody. And there always is an element of hard work and not giving up, and perseverance, which is another very important skill set. So you work hard, but ideally you also love what you're doing and you enjoy what you do. I think that's another very important factor for an entrepreneur. And last not least, and again, that's something that's very often overlooked, you need to have the capability to relax. Now that might sound a little bit counterproductive, because hey, if you're there to work, you want to build up a business, you want to start up something new, you have to put in all the hours, you have to lean in. Many people would say, yes, but if you don't take the time to recharge your batteries when you're burned out, or when you pushed through a couple of nights in a row, when you worked your head off from day to night, because it's an exciting new project, you need to get people on board, you need explaining things, you need to finish that presentation. I've been through it, and with the experience, I can now say I make sure that the day or the days after such an intense phase, I take time off. And you need to learn to consider that as valuable time and not as time being lazy. And I think that's easy to say. It needs to be understood with your mind and with your body, because if you don't, otherwise your body will come up at some stage, and that's a promise, and tell you no further, I'm giving up. I give you a migraine, I give you back pain, you can't sleep anymore, and you don't want to get there. So I think as a skill set, a very important skill set for young entrepreneurs is to take this well-being, physical and mental well-being. And how you do that, there are different ways, but you have to take that into account from day one.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. We also celebrate here is, what we also encourage here at Stedtnitz is to really enjoy those celebrations and take time for that. So not only after, working the night shift, burning the candle at both ends, you definitely need to take a break there. But even after a small success, take the time to celebrate it, because so often we're so excited about the next project and the next and the next, and we have this to-do list, so we just tick it off and we just go straight to the next thing rather than really celebrating what we achieved.
Exactly. And in order to celebrate, you need to be able to take a step back or change perspective, see it from a higher perspective, so that you can recognize the success you had. And what you just described, Stephanie, I think it can be also called the high achiever pitfall, because you're successful in something, and the next project is around the corner and you can't wait to get started, so you move on it right away, and so on and so on. And so you get almost high on it. And if there's a phase where you don't have the next achievement or the next success step around the corner, it can almost feel as if you fall into a hole, or as if standing still for a moment is a big failure, which of course it isn't. So I completely agree that let's celebrate our wins, and let's take it step by step. And even a small step can be celebrated and is an achievement in itself.
That's some great advice there, Anke. As we're on this topic already, what are some common mistakes that entrepreneurs make, in your opinion or in your experience?
I think starting without a plan is a mistake. It's very understandable. Maybe every entrepreneur has a great idea or a business idea or a business concept at the beginning in his or her head. And sometimes that can be so exciting that you want to rush through and start right away and sell your idea to clients. But that means that a couple of months down the line, you might notice that you neglected to review some essential legal or legislative steps that you should have looked at. So starting without a plan is definitely a mistake, and I always recommend anybody that they should sit down and take a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be a huge business plan at the beginning, but get sorted, write your ideas down, and ask also for advice. That's something else. Wanting to do everything on your own won't get you far. Even if you think you can do it all, you're full of energy, you have the drive, there will be points at your development where you should be asking for help or advice. And it doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're stupid. It doesn't mean that your business idea isn't any good. You need advice, you need help, you need people around you who support your idea, who can act as a sounding board, who can stop you from rushing into something without thinking first. And there can be people, and there should be people who take your well-being into account and say, listen, stop it here, take a step back, reflect. Is this really your goal? Is this really how you define success? Start your business aligned with your values. That's another recommendation I have. What else? Trying to do everything at once. It's not possible. Even if you think it is, there are so many things in the beginning when you set up a business that you want to consider. So get this step-by-step approach that will get you further, even if sometimes it looks small or slow. And one other point that I think is quite important is you might have a good idea for a product or for a service, but are you clear on your mission behind selling that product or developing that product or service? What is it good for? What is the vision that you have behind that product? I think there are only very few entrepreneurs who are just out there for the money and for the high income. I think most of the people who start out have an idea where they want to make an impact in the world for others, for other people, for the environment. And that is the mission behind what you're offering. And that should be clear, because only when that's clear, you can attract the right clients to purchase or to acquire that product. So that's on the mission. Another thing I would say is a common mistake is, I hinted at that already, not allowing time for regeneration and maintaining your balance. Maybe I want to give you an example. I've been speaking to a young entrepreneur who started online selling, importing and selling products via the internet at age, I think he was 16, 17. And the business took off. It developed very, very quickly. It grew. I think he's now in his mid-20s. He has employees. He didn't go to university. He did it. He is a really self-starter. And it grew so fast that he basically didn't have any time to sit down, reflect, work on the back office. It was always rushing behind the next necessary element of growth because it went so well. And when I spoke to him, I asked him the question, is there anything you miss or anything you would say you would like to make different? When do you reflect? When do you think about how to steer your business further? And he said, basically, I never have the time for that, except when I'm sitting in a taxi to the airport. And so you see, you can be the victim of your own success if it's going well. And sure, this is working out. He's making good money with it. He has all the material success and the success on the outer side of the career that he wished for. But some elements on the other side, on the inner side of the career, were also showing some cracks. No time for his relationship, no time to spend with his friends. no time at all to pursue his creative hobbies that he used to have. So there is a price to pay even for outer success. And that's something what I mean when I think allow some time for regeneration, because at times you will need to reflect. You will want to see where you stand in your life from a higher perspective. And in line with that, another mistake is ignoring the emotional implications of running a business. Because all the support you get out there, and there are many sites, and just Google it, there are a lot of sites that help you get started as an entrepreneur. They all focus on the business success, on the rational side, on how to develop, how to grow, how to expand your products, how to market yourself, how to communicate effectively, how to set up relations with the press, and so on. And that's all very important. However, as an entrepreneur, you go through phases. You're never just on the high. You will have times when things don't work so fast or where you question yourself. And that's especially young women. They have the tendency, or not young women, I think we women, we tend to question ourselves. Is this really right what I'm doing? Am I good enough what I'm doing? And I think not just women and men, everybody will go through phases where you have lows, where you say, am I on the right track? Is this my life? Is this what I want to do? Am I good enough? And you need to be able to have stamina to go through these downsides and these down phases. You need to build up resilience. And you can do that so much better if you have integrated a healthy and sustainable lifestyle as well. So actually, in my coaching, I also, even if it's not the main topic, I look at how do you deal with stress? How do you wind down when you come down from a really exhausting day? Because that's such an important part of running a successful business. How do you nourish yourself? What kind of food do you eat? What kind of information do you take in? We are so used to this overload out there. There's so much coming in. Everything is screaming for attention. And that needs to be navigated, and that should be limited as well. So finding your limits within the structure that you want to build up is also, I think it goes down with the self-management and the self-leadership. You have to draw lines and define borders so far and not further. And you need to build in those islands of regeneration, of self-care, of doing nothing. Doing nothing has a very negative connotation in our society because it's perceived as lazy. Oh, he's not doing anything. We need to rush and push. That's what society tells us to do, that we learn from an early age at school. So I think that's very important, because when I see people coming into my coaching when they're in their 40s or 50s, this rushing, pushing, never stopping, never questioning themselves, never setting a higher goal for themselves, that is exactly the reason why the dissatisfaction and a lack of fulfillment in life is founded. And so they come to coaching at this later stage and say, I've had a lot of success, everything's okay, but, and this but can be such a pain, such a trigger of unhappiness, that we really look at this point in the coaching. And it would be great if we could encourage people who are just starting out to take these points we're emotional creatures. It has to be taken into account. The earlier we learn to do that, the better.
I 100% agree. I think it often sneaks up on you. A lot of people begin and they start out thinking, I'm going to be my own boss. I'm going to take days off. I'm going to have 3-day weekends. I'm going to work however that fits right for me. Maybe I'll sleep in every day and just work evenings.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't stay like that. And it tends to creep up on you. And before you know it, you're feeling guilty for even taking a break. And that's just not a long-term strategy.
Absolutely not. And I think you bring in a very important point. We want to create a sustainable and long-term success business. And that means that the foundation has to be erected in the right sense. Oh, no, sorry, let me rephrase that. The foundation has to be built very, very carefully, because if you build up the pillars of your house or of your business without a solid foundation, it might crumble at any time when the cracks come, when the wind storms, when things are not going so well, when the environment is forcing you to take a shift. There's so many external factors that we cannot control. So we have to make sure, even as entrepreneurs, or especially as entrepreneurs, that we have a solid foundation. And part of that foundation is your personal mental and physical well-being. That it's non-negotiable, and you should integrate that really into your daily plan, into exercise. I mean, it's based nothing new. It's the boring stuff. It's exercise, it's breathing, it's proper nourishment, and it's still so important. So in the coaching, we touch on that. We say, what's your stress factor? What stresses you most? How do you recognize it? What are the symptoms? And if you recognize this, what can you do? We try to work out alternative habits that can take you into, but we work on establishing alternative habits that point you in the right direction, in a sustainable direction, even if that might take a little bit longer than for other people. And I think in connection with that, setting the goals too high, and you mentioned it, Stephanie, I completely agree. If the goals are too high and you don't reach it in the time that you think you should reach it, you will be disappointed by yourself. And self-doubt is another. I'm not saying it's a mistake, because I think there's a certain element of health in, or a healthy element in questioning or reviewing what you do and what you are from time to time. But if you get stuck in this self-doubt spiral, a spiral very often going downwards, then you cannot pursue your business career. And that's true either if you're employed or if you're self-employed. So overcoming these periods of self-doubt is also a very important part of the skill set that an entrepreneur needs. And it comes by walking the path. I mean, setting up a business is a journey. It's not a point where we say, oh, now it's done. Now I can lean back, or now everything's well. It will always continue. And some people might compare it with running a marathon. So you shouldn't speed too fast in the beginning. I think even if especially if you're in the self-doubt spiral, you need to have learned to be able to accept help or to call out for help. I know that myself. I love to do things on my own and not get anybody else in. Now I can do it on my own. I've always been able to do things on my own. It's where my pride is, but it's not always good. It doesn't always help me. There might be better ways. If I listen to somebody's advice, or if I told somebody about how I feel in a certain moment, because there's so many other people who have done the part, who have set up successful businesses and who are walking the journey, and listen to them. They share their experiences. There's the wealth of experience out there in the internet, and ask your friends, people you know, get recommendations. And that's also, I think, necessary for a healthy relationship in guiding yourself to succeed. Take in what others are doing, take in the good things, take in what you think brings you further, and ignore the rest. But don't lock yourself in and not look like left or right.
That reminds me of a saying in German. It's also the name of a book, Kopf versus Kapital.
Ah, okay. Yes.
And it's all about
That's
knowing
right. Yeah.
knowing your strengths and knowing what you're good at, and sticking to that. And at the start, maybe you will have to do more. You might have to take over some other tasks that you weren't planning on, but at the end of the day, it's all about doing what you're good at and actually outsourcing and finding people to do the things they're good at. So get someone who loves accounting, who's going to be great at it.
Exactly.
Get someone who, as you said, has experience in setting up a business. Let him do what he does best. And all of this knowledge coming together is actually so much more worthy than just having the capital, as in the monetary capital, to start a business, but no idea.
I think that's a very good point, because it actually relates to how do you, what is money for you? What is investment for you? I mean, a money mindset, this is not something we'll ever learn at school. We don't really learn how to deal with our money. We learn how to consume it. I mean, we learn how to spend it. We're encouraged to spend it as a society by marketing, by advertising. But really, also, why do we deal with money the way we deal? Why do we maybe sometimes stand in the way of our own success? there are some excellent programs out there on the internet on how to deal with your money mindset. And I think that's a very important point for an entrepreneur as well, because you have to deal with money, you have to deal with finances. And interesting point also in my coachings, I used to work with young people as well, starting out, and I work with values a lot. And if I ask people, what are your life values? Women, young women, come with a broad range of different values. So I normally ask for the first three. It can be trust, it can be cooperation, it can be compassion, everything out there. But one thing almost never, I think I had one woman who mentioned it, was money. Whereas if I have young men in my coaching and I ask them the same question, you bet that they have the value of money on their list. And I find that really, really interesting, because I think a lot of women, and I include myself in that, have a negative connotation when we talk about money. Whereas money itself, what is money? It's something neutral. You can do good things with money, you can do bad things with money. You need money. We all need money. We all need an income. So why are we sometimes so ashamed to admit that we need money, that we want money, that we do not do the things we do just for fun and out of joy and out of passion? We all need an income. And I think that's a very important aspect, and especially when working with women, that we look at their money mindset and that we look at their financial strategy. I mean, having a look at the financial strategy is also a part of the coaching package that I work with, because it's important. It shouldn't necessarily be the main focus, but it's an important focus, because doing business, being self-employed, means you are responsible for your own income, for your insurances, for your clients, for generating income, for how you spend it, how you save it, how you invest it, how you deal with banks. So there are a lot of points. I think it's a fascinating subject, and it's only one part of many other areas of starting a business.
Absolutely. I often think that money is like a magnifier. You bring what you bring to the table, and money will magnify that. So if you're insecure about money, if you have some limiting beliefs about money, that's going to be magnified. But if you come in with positive relationships with money and bringing that solid foundation, then that's the direction that it's going to take. So money, they say money changes people, but I would more say that wherever you are, money just will magnify that.
Yeah, and money is an enabler as well. If you go away from this money as a limiting belief, because that's also what a lot of people think, oh yeah, I have to work so hard and I can only make so much money. But see it in another way. Money can enable so many things, thoughts, actions. Yeah, it's a fascinating subject, and we take that into account in the coaching. And but there are also on the internet, there are a lot of courses, really good courses on money mindset out there.
Okay.
I think stedtnitz also, you did a seminar for young people on money, didn't you, last autumn?
We did, especially on investing and saving and making your money work for you. Yeah, it's something that we're also passionate about.
Super.
So following up on your solid foundation that you mentioned, we've talked about mistakes that people make, or some things maybe you should not do. What are the steps that you recommend to start your journey on becoming self-employed? It can be such a scary field to jump into. What would you recommend as the first kind of steps to go in that direction?
I think you mentioned a good point, because at the beginning you have your business idea and then you think, oh my God, there's so much to do. And a lot of people freeze because that's complete overwhelm. What should I focus on first? And I think we're talking also in this session, we're talking about setting up a business in Switzerland, right? So one proposal that I have is actually look at your business idea in context of the Swiss environment. What kind of company would be suitable to house your business idea? There are different structures in Switzerland that you can use. I mean, a lot of people in the service sector will work as an individual company, like an Einzelfirma. other people, especially if you work with others, might prefer a limited company, a GmbH. So there are different ways, and that is one point to start, or one idea to start looking at a company setup. And I think I would start from a legal, regulatory, and administrative point of view. Really looking at what is your product or your service, what are your expectations? So going in with a goal setting, what do you want to achieve with your business? What's your kind of income idea? Maybe you don't need to have the exact figures, but you need to have an idea of what you want to achieve. So looking at an administrative, figure-related point of view, goal setting, expectations, the company setup, which kind of company is suitable for you. You also need to look at it from a point of view of permits. There are certain professions in the health sector, for example, that need a license, or you need to have a specific certification. So we need to look at that. Is your business idea in line with one of those professions where you need to have certification? So to kind of make clear that whatever you do, it's on sound, you said it, your sound foundation, it's in line with the Swiss regulations and with the Swiss law. And from then onwards, when you have this foundation, and these things, these administrative steps are comparatively easy to set up. There are some good guidelines out there also from the Swiss Federation you can easily follow. Once this is there, I think the next step would really be looking at the whole concept from a higher perspective, to take everything into account. And taking everything into account means, market research, the financial structure, budget, products, product development, marketing. How do you want to sell your product? What kind of tools do you need? Will you need a website, visibility? How do you plan to market yourself? Branding, product design. There are so many different areas that play a role. And it's not to further confuse you. It's just that this is all there. Now let's start make a plan. Remember, we talk about the step-to-step approach. And then we can start to come up with a guideline. And to say, okay, with my product, I need to do this first. And then comes the other step. And in fact, come up with a document that shows where in your first year the priorities lie. So we really have a plan from January to December, or whenever you start your business, and look at it. Okay, in this month, the regulatory thing has to come first. And only when you got that, you can build up with the product or with the service. And only if you've got your service ready, if you don't know what you want to offer, then you should start to market it. So, but it depends. There's no one way that suits everybody. It's more like figuring out what works for you, or that what works for you as an individual. In a sense, there is no format that we can squeeze everybody in, but I think such a guideline is just something to help you navigate the feeling of overwhelm and not overlook important requirements of your business.
I think I would be very happy to have you as my advisor if I ever start my own business, Anke. You sound very knowledgeable. I'm very impressed.
I would love to work with you. I would love to work with you. Well, I say it's individual. We really look at what's important here, and also, where do you stand? I mean, there might be people who've done their market research already, who know exactly who their competitors. Who know exactly who their competitors are, and some people haven't even thought about that. They're just enthusiastic about their product. Then there are people who maybe have set up a successful online presence already. They're doing podcasts and they don't know where to go from there. Then there are people who maybe have a non-digital product idea, but then something like COVID comes along. How can I transform this into a digital product? And I think it's amazing what we see now in this Corona lockdown situation. I mean, there are people bringing business online that I never ever thought you could bring that online.
I know a lot of businesses that have taken advantage of their online presence that they already had set up and have really you made that work for them and are doing really well because of that.
You have so much support on the internet, and you can Google basically anything. The problem is more than find the focus and not to be confused by all this wealth of information that's out there. That's why I really have to focus and say, okay, I don't need this, I don't need that, even if it's interesting. It's like this child in the sweet shop. It's like, oh my God, where do I start? I think there is a push of creativity, sometimes born out of need and out of necessity. But I think it's fascinating. And I think there is so much room for creativity. And creativity is one of the issues that so easily gets swamped under if you're in full-time employment, or if you're in starting up as a self-employed person, rushing through and running after success, or being too quick, so that your life really gets out of balance. I took note of, there was a online entrepreneurs conference online earlier last year, and I remember a group of women, really successful women in their 40s, in their 50s, who had grown and developed multi-million-dollar businesses. And they said that their number one challenge, and they all agreed on that, was to maintain balance in their life. Because yes, they were successful, but they had rushed. There was such a push and such an excitement and such a wave pursuing this success. And it was great, and they learned a lot of things. But they said that the other side, the side where you spend time with your kids, the side where you have meaningful conversations with your friends, the side where you go for a walk with your parents or with a dog, or just the side where you sit down and be alone with yourself and go into this different state of mind. That's so important for us. That was no longer possible. And that's what they missed. And again, that's my mantra. I think I'm repeating myself, that I think it's so important that we take that side into account. And that's why in the step plan, or in the guideline that I develop with people in the coaching, I think we have to integrate those coaching elements that are not necessarily measurable in dollars or in Swiss francs, or in a time deadline. We need to allow time for that as well. And if I look at the sample of the plan, that would be, how do I define success and career for myself? What's my money mindset like? We talked about that earlier. How do I feel about getting visible as an entrepreneur? Yes, we have the extroverted people who love going out there, who love being on a podcast, who love being on Instagram video, you name it. And there are a lot of others who have a great product, who have a great idea, a great business idea, and they're afraid to become visible because they have to show themselves to do it. So what's their mindset with regard to this? And that goes also then links into factors like branding and marketing. So there are different, let's say, hard factors and soft factors that we need to both look at in order to have a business that has the solid foundation and not just a strong business, finance, and development side, product side. Yes, that's also very important. And everybody knows that, but a lot of people ignore that you need emotional stability, you need perseverance, you need resilience to deal with the many challenges that self-employed people face. Because face it, as self-employed, you're on your own with a lot of things. Yes, you can get support, but the support, you have to get it actively. When you work in a company, you get support through a lot of channels. You might be in a career development program. You might have a regular system of, or a regular agenda of talks with your boss, or reviews with your boss. Your boss will steer you in the right direction if he or she thinks that you've done something wrong, or you're not on the right track. So you get a lot more support that comes to you without you having to ask for it. But as an online entrepreneur, or sorry, as a self-employed entrepreneur, you have to reach out yourself to get help, to get advice, to get support. And that's not something we necessarily learn at school. That's something that you need a certain maturity to get there, to be able to say, I need help, I could do with some support. Could you look through that? Could you look at my figures? And so that is an inbuilt part of of a guideline, of a successful guideline that I would recommend to people to set up.
That's excellent advice, Anke. Based on your own experience, is there anything else that is there any advice that you would give to our listeners, or is there any recommendations that you can make on what lessons you've learned along the way?
If you set up a business, there's always some sort of investment involved. That's investment of money, of time, money and time for training, for example, for personal or product development. And these investments, they don't yield return overnight. It's a process. And to have this patience, to wait, to build the foundation, to go step by step, that's something that I find very, very difficult, and that I only learned it doesn't help to rush. You need patience, and you need to invest. There's no entrepreneurship without investment of some sort. So just be aware of that patience is crucial. To not give up prematurely when things don't materialize in the first in the time frame that you set for yourself. So that's something I had to learn the hard way as well. And then actually I think as an entrepreneur, you have those times when you think it's all too much, it's too difficult, I can't be bothered. Oh, it was so easy when I was still employed. But yet then again kicks in this freedom element where say, yes, but as an entrepreneur, I can do what I want. I can follow my mission. I can follow my values, and that's just priceless. I think that's very important. Another thing I realized, I'm the type of person who loves to do things on her own and who only delegates if there's no other way. And it's much more healthy if I'd said earlier, no, I can't do that on my own. Let's pass that on to somebody else. That's some expert deal with that. Yes, it will cost money. That's the case, but you will be free to spend your time on the things that you're good at. So, for example, for me, that is accounting. I looked at some accounting softwares. It was awful. I just thought, oh my goodness, I don't want to really have to deal with it. So in the end, I handed it out. And I have a tax advisor that I turn to for even simple questions. It's probably nothing difficult, but I don't want to do it. I don't see value in me doing that. So that this taxes and accounting are typical examples of what I outsource. Then one thing, even as a coach, I know how important timeouts are for myself. And still, when things get tough or there's a pressure from an unexpected source, I tend to rush and burn myself out. And I'm in an age now where you can't do that without being punished afterwards. Your body's just saying, yeah, so far and not further. So for me, one important learning was to really build in recreational time into my agenda on a weekly basis. So I have sports built in my week. I have movement. I have time for doing nothing. And it doesn't matter what I spend that time for doing nothing with. I can sit in the sofa and read a book. I can take a walk. I can sit and go in the bathtub and soak in the warmth. It doesn't matter, but it's important because for myself, I know that I need time with myself and alone. So I have to create those time slots where I can be on my own. And that works. And then I have a quarterly review with myself. This is more goal setting. So every quarter I sit down and say, okay, I had these plans for this year. Where am I? Am I still on track? Is there something that didn't work at all? So it's like interview with myself, going through the plan I have and making small adjustments. And basically I plan 2 to 3 hours for this exercise on a quarterly basis. And then I do an annual review as well. And the annual review, I review the big goals in life. Do I live in a place where I want to live? Am I happy? How with my relationships? Is my business still on the sound foundation? Are my goals still my goals? Is the way I define success still valuable? Or has it changed over the past year? And that's, I normally go away somewhere. It wasn't possible during Corona, but I normally do that and have 2-3 days in a chalet somewhere on my own. And I go through these points. And that's very, very useful. And it gives me peace of mind. That's my way to structure myself. Other people might have different ways, but they have to plan for timeouts. It's crucial. And another thing that I think I learned is get a buddy, get somebody, a sparring partner. You can't do everything on your own. You need a sparring partner. You need somebody who can act as your sounding board. You want to talk things through. You need somebody who is honest with you, who says, well, I don't think that's a good idea. Or do you remember you tried that last year and it didn't work? So why do you want to do it again? Because let's face it, we're all biased. Like, we all have our blind sides. So sometimes it's good if you have somebody who gently but firmly points us back in the right direction. That can be a buddy, it can be a mentor, it can be a coach, it can be a good friend. But get feedback, get guidance, and reflect that process with somebody other than just yourself. I think I've hinted at this point a couple of times ago, but it took me a long while to find my own definition for what success really means to me. For a long, long time, I thought that success was what other people presented as success. That climbing the career ladder, you have to go enter a company and go through a program, get promoted, climb the career ladder. And because this didn't happen to me that way, I felt really bad until at some stage I just learned to, it would have never worked for me that way. I basically quit my job at the time, and I ended up having two jobs. One job in the finance sector, a very rational approach dealing with figures, which I'm good at. And then at the same time, an approach or a job where I can be creative, where I can devise programs, things where I'm doing coaching, where I can live out my other side. And that really is so fulfilling. So that's a completely different definition of a career or success than what's out there, what we learn at school, what's pursued at university. But that's why I think it's so important that you think, what is career for me? What is success for me? Because you have to find your own definition.
Very wise words there, Anke. It sounds to me like ideally self-employment is getting the best of both worlds. So having that freedom and that creativity and being your own boss and doing what you love, while also incorporating from a traditional employment perspective, things like the yearly Mitarbeitergespräch, so you've got your performance review, you've got colleagues to, as you said, you've got sparring partners or colleagues, people to tell you what your ideas are like, or, hey, look, Anke, it's time to go home now. Take a break. We'll relook at this tomorrow. We do need that. And if we can't get it in the traditional working environment, then we need to find how to incorporate it into our self-employment.
Yeah, reach out. And you're not, even if you're self-employed, you're not alone, and you shouldn't be alone. You're part of a network. I mean, also you have clients, you have partners, you have backup structures. I mean, you will need to work nowadays anyway. You will need to work with IT people, IT support. You need to work with probably marketing support. Banks. There's a huge range of people you work with. And again, I come back to my very first point that I mentioned: be open, be curious. Don't take things for granted, because the world we're living in the moment is changing very, very fast. Some doors are closing. I think this lifetime employment, as our parents knew it, doesn't exist anymore. But also there are new ways opening. I mean, there can be some kind of mosaic lives where you have 2 or 3 jobs at the same time and still be happy and successful and feeling fulfilled. There can be still the traditional paths where you feel completely absorbed in your scientific career, for example, working on a problem that's important to solve for the environment or for science or from a health point of view. There are so many different options out there. And that's also one thing. There are other ways of working than just having the full-time employment and the self-employment. There can be mixed types in between. And that also might be a point worth exploring before somebody starts out in a full-time self-employment. Because let's face it, startup as a self-entrepreneur or an independent entrepreneur is you need a lot of courage, you need a lot of willpower, and that's great. And there is a certain element of risk. And a lot of people are not willing to take that risk. So it might be a solution if you have the security of a part-time job and at the same time start your independent business on the side. That could be a completely acceptable path for many people.
So what are some resources that you can recommend to people who are wanting to learn more about being an entrepreneur in Switzerland?
It's called kmuadmin.ch, so small, medium-sized enterprises admin.ch, which is a site from the federal government, which I find quite helpful because this site, kmuadmin.ch, not only provides links to various kinds of support programs for self-starters, it also gives some support guidelines or checklists that you can kind of go through and say, yeah, is this something for me, or maybe I'm not the right type for that. And also they have specific information related to starting a business in Switzerland with regard to the company type, the permits that you might need. There's just one thing, that if you want to set up a business in Switzerland, you need to have residency in Switzerland. But other than that, you can be from a foreign country. You do not need to have Swiss passport in order to set up a company in Switzerland.
Okay, that's good to know.
But I think that site is a very good start. And there is another site that is called startups.ch. And that's independent of the government. It's just a site that helps people at all ages to set up their business in Switzerland. And it also guides or steers you through the different requirements that you need to have in order to set up your company. But maybe also at this point, sorry, that is not necessarily a resource, but that's a piece of information. In Switzerland, you do not necessarily need to enter your business in the commercial registry until you reach a certain threshold, and that's an income of 100,000 Swiss francs. So if you're below that, you can stay independent without having to enter or to register yourself, which gives you a little bit more freedom to test around, to play around with your ideas. So that just as a piece of information. But by all means, get yourself informed on the site that I mentioned, because there is it's a good starting point. And you cannot escape this decision on what kind of company you set up anyway. So start at the startups.ch or the kmuadmin.ch kind of recommendation.
Thank you for your tips, Anke. So there you have it, changemakers. Starting a business is an exciting project that can start off as a side hustle and can eventually take on a life of its own. But you need the courage to face the risks that come with it, and also the perseverance to stick at it when the going gets tough. So thank you so much for your time today, Anke. I really enjoyed our discussion. If you guys are interested in working with Anke, she designed a business startup package together with stedtnitz to support new entrepreneurs in the services sector. This is a combination of hands-on practical advice, like you heard in the video today, as well as mindset coaching to help people navigate the many challenges of the first months as a new entrepreneur. This coaching also includes support as a sparring partner and sounding board for business-related ideas, self-management, and personal development. So we would love to hear from you. That's it for me today, Changemakers. Have a lovely rest of your day and talk to you soon.